Let's break some of this down now with you, Ravi, if I can. And we'll start with Russia, the point that Matt was making there. What would success look like for a Biden-Putin summit, given what we're seeing play out here? Maybe not necessarily a direct message to the Americans, but certainly something that American lawmakers and politicians are very mindful of. What happens to Alexei Navalny, and have been calling for increased support for him and his organization.
So I think there are two answers to that question, Ayman. I think on the one hand, there's rhetoric, and on the other hand, there is actual tangible progress or tangible achievements or takeaways from the meeting. I think on the rhetoric front, I think that side is going to be easy. What Biden will focus on the most is to present a very different face than the one that Trump did. And that's not going to be difficult to do. Instead of appearing to be pliant, he's going to appear to be tough. He's made that very clear already. And I think that will set the tone for their relationship. That will set the tone also for how the two countries extend their relationship over the next few years. That's the broader rhetoric, and we will all be looking out to parse how Biden appears to be around Putin. But more substantially, I think, as was just said, I think the Navalny issue will be front and center. I think Syria is going to be a major part of the discussions, in that we know that the U.S. wants to try and pressure Russia to try and ensure that aid gets into Syria, which Russia has been stopping on several sort of opening points into Syria. That's going to be another issue. And then, of course, Europe. Biden would have just come from the NATO summit, and the issue of sort of, conflicts across Europe's borders. In fact, the very issue of borders not being secure is an issue that I think Europeans will worry greatly about. And in no uncertain terms, I imagine they will tell Biden to press Putin on that.
Let me ask you, Ravi, about just America standing in the world right now. The Pew Research Center released the results of a new survey of people in 12 countries. And overall, they found that 62% of people in those countries have a favorable view of the United States. That's up from 34% just a year ago. 75% of people in those countries express confidence that the U.S. president would do the right thing regarding world affairs. That is up from just 17%. Take a step back here for us, if you can, when you look at the announcement of the COVID vaccine that the United States wants to buy and distribute. What is that and those numbers tell us about the enormous expectations for a Biden presidency on the global stage?
The key word there, Ayman, was expectations. So those poll numbers came out before the U.S. announced that it will try and get 1 billion vaccines to the world. And those numbers represent expectations. They represent the way in which the world has a very different sense and hope for Biden than it did for Trump. They knew with Trump that America would see the world as a zero-sum game. They would see the world as, they would see allies with suspicion that the U.S. wouldn't want to engage. We know all of that. With Biden, there's a lot of hope. And I have to say, I'm not so sure that the announcement that the U.S. will try to push for more vaccines goes far enough. I think the world can do a lot more. We know from the IMF that it would cost only $50 billion to ensure vaccinations are available to much of the world. And even now, this is going to be a discussion at the G7, I'm sure, a lot more needs to be done. And for two reasons. One, of course, is that if the rich Western countries don't move quickly to ensure that the rest of the world is vaccinated, they will let them down. That there could be mutations that could come back to hit the West. But more than all of that is the moral argument. I think it would be a missed opportunity for the Biden presidency, but also I think for European leaders writ large, were they to not think about equity, were they to not think about the way in which they could easily mobilize money to then ensure a speedier distribution of vaccines around the world. Let's not forget, countries around the world, they're looking at the US and at Europe, and they're seeing how these countries are printing money, how they are putting forward giant amounts of stimulus to resuscitate their economies. They can do the same for the world.
All right, Ravi Agrawal, thank you so much for that insight. I greatly appreciate it, as always. Good to see you.